All right, welcome back, everyone. So we have Christian going to lead us off with his Himothy's for the running back position.
Yeah, no. So my Himothy is yet again on the running back position. Just following my draft strategy is not going to be too crazy. Maybe one of them will. But Derrick Henry is going to be my Himothy. He's going to be my first Himothy at
Mm,
least. I love
how did I
Derrick
know you were going
Henry.
to pick him?
Yeah, you know that, right? You know how much I love Derrick Henry, but it's not even it is an Alabama bias thing. It is he's just a beautiful running back to watch play the game, right? Just
Hmm.
amazing positional player who just again, elite level, right?
Yep.
Consistently. I think that ties in though to why we like him at fantasy. So even though he didn't have a crazy overwhelming snap share percentage that we want to see, like, hey, we want to see Derrick Henry be on 80% of the snaps, and he's not doing that because he's not a pass catcher, right? Even though he was closer to 60 last year, he played all 17 games.
Hmm.
He had 1,900 yards, just above that, rushing yards, and 16 touchdowns. And his average yards per attempt was 5.9. For those of us who are saying that Derrick Henry is slowing down, the slander's gotta stop. The slander's gotta
Stop it.
stop. Yeah, you gotta
Get some
stop
help.
with it. Get some help, exactly. Lamar Jackson, we saw an improved runner at the quarterback position has opened up some lanes for Derrick Henry. Even if people have a full box, they have another runner to worry about, right?
Right.
So I would say even if Derrick Henry, there's gonna be frustrating weeks as a Derrick Henry owner. It's always been that way too. There's gonna be weeks to where he doesn't get a touchdown and maybe he has like 70 something rushing yards and it's not pretty for how high you're gonna draft him because his ADP is 12 right now. But then you're gonna have that week where Derrick Henry has 3 rushing touchdowns, 170 yards, and a passing touchdown randomly, right? I mean, he's
Right.
just he's just gonna obliterate your opponent. So he is the Himothy because of consistency, he's the Himothy because he's a tank, and he's a Himothy because he will be until he's not. I mean, it's inevitable. Like, with him, I don't think it's gonna be his choice when he stops, right?
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily gonna be father time in this scenario, I don't believe.
Yeah, I liked what you said about the haters have got to stop because we're still watching Derrick Henry play amazing football. When you're talking about how big and beautiful he is to watch play, I was also just thinking like, how can something so big run so fast? And would you want to be in the way of that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That man he could probably kill a lot of people just running through them. I'm surprised he hasn't yet. But I have an interesting question for you. So obviously in fantasy football drafts, what you'll see is there's a lot of wide receiver quarterback stacks. You'll
Mhm.
see guys that get Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and or maybe like CD Lamb, and go and get Dak Prescott, go and get Joe Burrow, go and get those guys where when they throw them a touchdown, they get the bonus points essentially, right? Which is why that's a strategy. So I have a question for you. Um, in your drafts, would you be looking to get the Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson stack? Because right now I'm showing that Derrick Henry is getting drafted around 9 overall ADP wise, and Lamar Jackson sitting at kind of like 21, 22. So essentially, if you have kind of, the end of a draft, or the last pick, you may find yourself in a situation where Lamar Jackson falls to you. Derrick Henry kind of falls to you. Is that a stack that you would want on your team?
Yeah, not for me. It's a great question. It's not for me because I'm going to keep alluding to this, and eventually we'll hopefully see this in another mock draft we'll do where I don't set myself up as the last pick. But that was just such a beautiful turn to where I felt like I could draft two running backs together. I'm normally not drafting running backs this early. Why? Because if you spend that much capital on a running back, you're losing the wide receiver depth, and again, I don't love that unless it's a perfect system. I don't mind drafting Derrick Henry early because outside of the other running backs, it's been a long time since he's missed significant time, right? What,
Right.
2021 was the last time he was injured for a significant period of time. He's been an Iron Man throughout his career, right?
Right.
So I don't mind the pick early. The only thing is I would never pick Derrick Henry early second round or late first round, and then just to go back and draft Lamar a round and a half later. I wouldn't do that because that goes against everything in my fantasy religion. But
Mhm.
I mean, for those for people who are out there doing that, it would have panned out perfectly last season. So
Oh,
I'm
right,
not
right.
I'm not going to say not to do it. I think from explosiveness, I mean, that offense has enough to go around. So I wouldn't be afraid to do it. I wouldn't feel comfortable necessarily in the stack because we saw Lamar Jackson take that progression as a passer last season, right? So that would
Mhm.
be my only concern is like if we're drafting Lamar Jackson, you're actually probably hoping that he keeps up the same passing production. And if he does, that could potentially hurt Derrick Henry a little bit. Potentially. Didn't last season, but again, last season could have been an anomaly, right?
Right.
Well, how many seasons are you going to have a running back have 16 rushing touchdowns while your quarterback's throwing 41?
Mhm.
I mean, that's kind of crazy, right?
That sounds like a trip to the Super Bowl if I've ever heard one.
Exactly. Probably should have been. So,
Yeah.
but no, great question. Interesting concept. Not for me, but I don't think it's something that would hurt your fantasy team.
Yeah, for sure. And the reason why I asked you is because I was kind of leaning on the side of that that's not necessarily for me either, but who are we to say? Like Christian said, if y'all did that last year, I mean, you guys probably did exceptional in your draft in your leagues. But I'm going to talk about a guy who I am so very excited to talk about. I think right now he's going at a when I first kind of saw where his ADP was, I was shocked, right? But I'm going to talk about Bucky Irving, another Buccaneer. Bucky Irving is just he's him. He's him, and I have no other way of saying that, and it's just that's why he's in this episode. Bucky Irving, second year running back for the Buccaneers. ADP wise, kind of going around 21, 22. So if you can snag him at the end of your second, maybe into your third, I think that's perfect value for him. He is absolutely primed for a breakout year, and he is the Buccaneers guy on this team. And I'm going to go ahead and explain a little bit why. So Bucky Irving, just a side note, I did draft him with the fourth pick in a dynasty draft. So there's only 4 rounds in a dynasty for a dynasty that's not new and it's continuing. I believe they're called like supplemental drafts, but I drafted him with my fourth and my last pick last year. And I've never been so excited that a pick like that landed the way that it did. Bucky Irving, he had to fight for his position as the starter for this team. So since he had to fight Ricard White for this spot, but now that he is in the spot, he is the guy. Christian, go ahead and talk for a little bit. I see you.
I got my hand up, right, in
You
the
cut me
chat.
off real quick, so
No,
go
no,
ahead.
no, 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 no. I was. It was just gonna be a thought at the end. I didn't mean to cut you off here,
Okay, okay.
but. So
But
what we'll do? Go ahead and continue your thought, and then I'll come back with the question because you actually kind of mentioned it. I'll give you a hint of what it's going to be into. That way you can kind of
okay,
prep for this. It is going to be the Richard White conversation versus Bucky Irving, right? I
yeah,
know a lot
yeah,
of people are talking about the fear of the tandem. So
I'm
just
excited.
that's going to be the kind of the question towards the end. But go ahead and continue.
Sure. But I just want to point out some stuff that Bucky Irving did last year. I think is absolutely amazing, especially coming off the bench, kind of taking over Ricard White's position. But so since week 11, which was their bye week, he had 10. I'm sorry, he had 4 top 10 finishes, including uh, 3 of those being top 5 finishes. So when the team started to utilize him more, meaning before the bye week, I think he was getting anywhere from 3 to 9 carries per game. They were hardly using him. When they started to really use him, he was getting about 16 carries per game, along with 3 to 5 targets per game. So when this man was getting about 20 touches a game, he was producing. Last year, coming off the bench and taking into this new role, he had about 207 rushing attempts. He still broke 1,000 yards. He went for 1122 on the season, along with 52 targets for 47 receptions. That's nearly a 90% catch rate. So this guy, not only can he run, he's explosive, he's got great hands. And I kind of wanted to point him out to like a couple of other big names that you guys might be drafting in your fantasy drafts. But compared to a guy like Bijan Robinson and to a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, he only rushed for 304 attempts for 1,400 yards and 61 catches on the year. And Gibbs, he's already in a timeshare with Monty. He rushes for about 250 times, and gets about 1,400 yards. And he also 52 receptions for 517. So when you kind of pan out the picture and you look at what Bucky Irving did in less than half a season, essentially, right? Because he started playing a lot more week 11. This guy is just showing this team why he does not deserve to be on the bench and why he beat out Ricard White for this spot. So some things that I love beyond Bucky Irving that I've kind of already touched on in our first little talking point was just this team that he's on. This team with Baker Mayfield, the wide receiver core that they have, the tight ends, it's just so explosive, right? This team is going to be scoring a lot of points this year, and I want my pick. I want my hand in the pie right here for these guys. Some cons that Christian wanted to talk about for sure is Ricard White. He's probably the biggest thorn in Bucky Irving's back right now. Just kind of looming, waiting to kind of maybe get his spot back, how they're going to do this timeshare, who's going to operate more like the first couple downs, who's going to be the third down back. But from what I've seen in the preseason and what I've heard from camp, Bucky Irving is just getting utilized more and more for this offense. And it does not worry me in the slightest that he is the better back compared of the two. Um, and last note that I'll touch on is he ended as the running back 6 in week 17, 77 yards, 2 receptions, and 1 was for a touchdown. So this guy, as the season progressed, just became more and more utilized and became more and more integral to this team. But Christian, so go ahead. I don't know if I answered your question well enough, but I am not
Okay.
worried about Ricard White at all.
Yeah, no, and I don't think most fantasy owners should be. I think the numbers I was looking at mainly that would just maybe a case for Bucky Irving if he takes over more of the backfield, right? Because you would expect him to, especially late in the season. It seemed like they were just giving the backfield to him, right?
Hmm.
He already beat White out in attempts last season. Just to preview your points further, I think the part that could make him dangerous is maybe we don't consider Irving a receiving back, but 47 receptions last year for 392 yards. And then if you look at White's production receiving, very similar, right, for
Right,
Rashad White. So if we look at his stats, 51 receptions for 393 yards, but here's the kicker, 6 touchdowns receiving. So
right,
compared to 0 for Irving, if Irving could sneak a little bit of that receiving stat, I think your HIM-OTHY can really pan out for people, especially because you can get him later. He's not going to be your RB, you know, one of one or 1-2. He's not going to be your first couple of running backs off the board, right?
right.
So you can get him in the second round, and have a really good talent, maybe even the third round, and have him a
Yeah.
really good talent.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But let's go ahead and hear your second running back, Himothy. I'm curious who you've also picked.
Yeah, so my second running back Timothy here is going to be the injury man himself, Christian McCaffrey, right?
Sorry.
If you saw our mock draft, you saw me take the turn of uh McCaffrey as well as Ashton Genty, right? Um, I when it comes to McCaffrey, yes, last season was terrible, but if we look at his injury history, we have to go back to similar to Derrick Henry, 2021, to where he was missing significant, or excuse me, 21 in 2020, when he was missing significant time. He only played 3 games in 2020, 7 games in 2021. But in 2017, 16 games, 2018, 16 games, 2019, 16 games, 2022, 17 games, 2023, 16 games. So, majority of the time, Christian McCaffrey throughout his career is on the field, right? There is always injury risk with football players. It's never not going to be the case. But let's talk about why you would want Christian McCaffrey as your Himothy. So let's look back to his last 2 pretty good years of production, 2023 and 2022, when he wasn't injured. 2023, 16 games, 1,459 yards rushing, 14 rushing touchdowns, 67 receptions on 83 targets, 564 rushing touchdowns, and receiving receptions, and then seven receiving touchdowns. So you're talking about a guy who in 2023, not that long ago, had 21 total touchdowns. Right. And had a lot of receiving action. The year prior had 85 receptions for 741 receiving yards. So I mean, yes, he's older, right? Yes, he is on a team, or yes, he just came off of a pretty significant injury riddled year, but he's
Mhm.
also on a team that everybody's projecting to everybody, whether it's ESPN, other fantasy people, whatever it is, everybody's saying the 49ers are gonna score a lot of points. I don't know why they're saying that, to be honest. I think they're gonna be the same old 49ers on offense. I don't think it's gonna be that much more significant than what they've done in the past,
Right.
but everybody seems to think so. If he gets that kind of volume where they're throwing the ball more, maybe he doesn't get 1,400 rushing yards, but he's gonna catch the ball because Deebo Samuel's not there, right?
Mhm.
The blanket's not there. Uh, Brandon Ayuk is hurt. Pearsall seems like the best wide receiver option, right, for the 49ers currently outside of George Kittle. Um, Christian McCaffrey's gonna catch the ball a ton this season, as long as he stays healthy. So in full PPR, draft Christian McCaffrey. Yes, you should be afraid of the injuries, but you should be afraid of the injuries for everybody. He's going at ADP number 11. Get him at the end of your first round, early second round, and be comfortable with it. Don't ask questions. Don't doubt yourself. Just do it.
So you're saying don't be scared. Forget about the past and just take this man with full confidence.
Don't be scared. You just need 16 weeks.
16 weeks.
You don't that's all you need. You don't even need him to be the fully healthy every single game. You just need if you get 14 weeks out of Christian McCaffrey, he's probably still top 5 running back if he's healthy during these 14 weeks. So, yeah, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid about somebody who's going to be there, who's been going to get the receiving stats and the rushing stats. Don't be afraid. Just go get him.
That's very fair. I like the pick there. I like the confidence. Obviously, you have to have a lot of confidence to take someone like Christian McCaffrey, who last season, finished as the RB 68. He had everything that went wrong for that man, unfortunately. Um, I will say, I do have another question for you
Mhm.
regarding Christian McCaffrey. Um, are you taking his handcuff, Isaac Guerendo, um, and are you making him a priority to find him in the draft later on to make sure you have him just in case McCaffrey does go down? Because like you said, when McCaffrey's healthy, he's amazing.
Mhm.
But are you taking any extra insurance with McCaffrey, given his history?
Yeah, I don't mind taking the insurance on McCaffrey, but the way that I typically draft is I'm not gonna draft my own handcuff typically, right? Unless it falls to me in like the very last round, which is not gonna happen on a handcuff for McCaffrey. I'm typically especially in a 49ers offense, I'm typically not gonna spend the capital to draft my own handcuff. And instead of doing that, I might go get somebody that we might talk about in another episode that we consider a sleeper, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Who instead of being his backup in a 49ers offense is maybe somebody else's starter, potentially. Maybe not as a prolific of an offense, but the volume's gonna be there. So I'm not spending the capital on my own handcuff for Christian McCaffrey, but I don't mind the decision if other people wanna do so, because I understand there's fear of like, well, what if he does miss time because he has been injured in the past, right?
Right. No,
But
I love it. I love the confidence. I love your perspective because, like you said, like why am I going to waste a pick? Essentially, right? I'm going to go out and get someone else who has more potential to be RB1.
right.
No, so I love it. Um, all right, we're going to move in here to my second HIM-OTHY for the running back position. And this is a guy who I think, just like Bucky Irving, is kind of going at just an insane value right now. This is probably the guy I want to talk about the most that I'm most excited for, just because of the value that you could get on this guy. I want to talk to you about a little running back named Chase Brown for the Cincinnati Bengals. Right now, his ADP is just it's criminal. It's too low. If you're playing in a league with friends, make sure they don't know who Chase Brown is and make sure you do. Chase Brown's going at ADP 2930, so you can definitely get him at the end of a third round, maybe even as late as a early fourth, which is just insane for the stats that I'm about to tell you. I will put a warning on Chase Brown that I haven't put a warning on anyone else. This is a potential RB1, and I'm not talking RB1 for your team. I'm talking RB1 overall. Huge warning right here. This man, which a lot of people may not know, he had 8 finishes in the top 13 running backs for the week, right? So 8 finishes in the top 13. Okay. And it goes beyond that. He had 4 top finishes in the top 5. So this is a guy who's just honestly probably one of the most consistent running backs that we've talked about, probably other than Derrick Henry, but obviously at a much later value than Derrick Henry. And so he did that basically for half the season, this kind of production. Week 9, from week 9 on, he was a top 13 running back minus 1 week, and that includes the bye, right? So this guy was a machine second half of the year. I think the way that the Bengals utilize this man is just you want this guy on your team. He's definitely that workhorse role, and a pass catcher, right? So he has a minimum of 3 targets a game, apart from 2 weeks, and has had as many targets in a game as 11. So this guy got great hands, got the speed, got everything. You're going to want this guy on your team. Last year, he rushed for 229 times for sub 1,000, which was probably the least exciting thing about him, and maybe the reason why he is going so late. But this year, I see no reason that he doesn't break 1,000 rushing yards easy. He was also targeted 65 times and caught 54 of those for 360 yards and 4 touchdowns, which is typically pretty good for a running back. So things that I love about Chase Brown is that he's already established himself as that workhorse role. I think he's had a little bit of time to kind of get into it. First year didn't really do too much, and then last year started to get a lot better towards the end of the season. So I think he's really primed for a huge running back role this year. He can definitely handle the load. And another thing that we've talked about in another show is just how bad the Bengals defense is. So the Bengals are going to need to score a lot of points to win games. So I see them using Chase Brown in the passing game. I see them using him in the running game. I think he's just an all-around solid running back. Um, Things that I am worried about, though, for Chase Brown are very small, but still should be worried about. I want to talk about his potential overuse, right? Because if he's getting 20 plus touches a game, that is still something that you just kind of worry about for the wear and tear running backs. Obviously, they're the position that gets used the most, gets used the hardest, most contact. Running back lifespans in the NFL are typically not the longest. So you want to basically get this star while it's burning bright. And the other guy I want to talk about, just kind of in Chase Brown's shadow that's looming, is a former Red Raider in Taj Brooks. I think they are not only very similar. Taj Brooks worries me as a potential Chase Brown owner because of how similar they are. And if Chase Brown did go down, Taj Brooks is going to fill that role. He's got great hands. He was obviously a workhorse at Texas Tech. So he's going to slide right in there for the team, which is perfect. It's perfect for the Bengals. But fantasy wise, he is someone who potentially could give Chase Brown a huge run for his money. And I kind of also want to mention him as a sleeper for a future episode too, because Taj Brooks, he's that guy also. I will mention him as a mini HIM-OTHY. But Christian, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I like the pick. I have similar concerns just because of our boy Taj Brooks, who is creeping up the back in the depth chart right now, and you see he's not quite right behind Chase Brown, I don't believe just yet, but it's going to happen, especially in these last couple of preseason games. Brooks looked really good, right?
Yeah.
So I would be concerned slightly with that because there's been time periods like you've mentioned where Brown hasn't been. Not necessarily, you didn't necessarily mention this, but I would call this out to where there's been time periods where not only Brown hasn't been, but the Bengals haven't been extremely efficient. And
Right.
if you've seen any Texas Tech football games, which you should go watch some Brooks highlights if you're a Bengals fan, there he preaches consistency.
Hmm.
He moved our games, our offensive game went as far as he did, right?
Right.
So I think you do have somebody that's gonna be eventually climbing maybe halfway through the season for some sort of share of the backfield just because of how good he is, especially in the pass protection, which sometimes Chase Brown sometimes lacks in. Um,
Sure.
I would also say that I don't dislike the pick at all, especially on the receiving side of things. My biggest concern is actually just how atrocious the offensive line for the Bengals is,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, okay, well, the rushing stats maybe are not very efficient going forward as far as yards per carry, but the upside that Chase Brown has receiving the ball, at least while he's owning the share of snaps presented to him, I think that's where there could be a lot of value if he gets those receptions from 54 to 65 for the year. I think that could be crazy, which is a total possibility in this coming season, right? Uh,
Right.
so yeah, I've loved the pick. I'm mainly more just concerned about how bad the Bengals offensive line looks. Just atrocious. They were throwing Joey B around like a rag doll in preseason, which is crazy. Crazy.
But so we'll go ahead and dive into our last set of bunch here. We have the wide receiver role. Probably one of the most exciting roles that we'll talk about. So Christian, go ahead and start us off with who you have picked for your wide receiver.
Yeah, so my wide receiver HIM-OTHY is Drake London. Um,
Nice.
Yeah, I like Drake London, at least my first pick here. He's at his ADP is currently 19, so you can get him later than most true number one wide receivers. Everybody's talking about Drake London and having a breakout season. Um, I'm buying in on that mainly just because you have weapons around him, right? So you have an excellent running back in Bijan Robinson who's going to be able to help to move the ball on the ground, make sure that the linebackers and safeties are biting up, which is going to be able to create space for London, which we've seen. You have a new quarterback in play who's a little bit more mobile than Kirk Cousins. Right. So with Penix being able to move in the pocket a little bit more, buy some time, and continue to develop a relationship with Drake London, I think that's going to add a little bit of just kind of like the Patrick Mahomes-esque creativity to where you get some cheap fantasy points like Kelsey would with Mahomes or like Tyreek Hill would with Mahomes. And I'm using the Mahomes comparison not to say that I think Penix Jr. is going to be that level of talent, but I do think he has similar levels of escapability, right? And be able to
For
put
sure.
to extend plays, which is going to be good for cheap fantasy points if the play kind of breaks down. So I like Drake London a whole lot. If you look at his stats for last season, they weren't terrible. So even if he repeated last season's stats, played 17 games, 100 receptions, 1,200 yards roughly, and 9 receiving touchdowns. I think that I saw he was either the number one targeted wide receiver in the red zone or close to the number one targeted wide receiver in the red zone. So the red zone targets are there. You would expect them to continue just because he is their true wide receiver one over there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then if also just one last touching point for Penix, right? Any the wide receivers that he was with at Washington have been terrible in the NFL, right? Which tells me you had a quarterback that was making his wide receivers look really good. Who do I compare that to? When we were at Texas Tech, as much as we loved him, Jakeem Grant
Mm-hmm.
had some great times returning some touchdowns for the Miami Dolphins as a kick returner, right? But
Right.
didn't pan out to be a wide receiver in the NFL. At Texas Tech, Patrick Mahomes made Jakeem Grant look like Tyreek Hill, right? He
Right.
elevated the wide receiver talent. I think you
Yes.
saw that with Penix. So if you have an already elite wide receiver in Drake London, I think once they start to establish their connection, you're looking at more touchdowns, more receptions. I think you could be looking at true one of one wide receiver here this season. You know, I think it's going to be really hard to compete with the volume that Chase is going to get, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's right there and they're tied with him or right behind him.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I think it's very similar to kind of why, like your Drake London pick. I think it's very similar to kind of like the reasons why I liked Baker Mayfield and Bucky Irving for a lot of those reasons. I think the Falcons offense as a whole is just looking really good. You got Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, you know, this is going to be his year's guy. This is going to be his year. This is going to be he's finally going to figure it out. But with all of those guys kind of spreading the field, there's no reason why Drake London should be getting doubled or anything like that. He is going to get all of his looks. He's going to get all of his targets. I would kind of say that I slightly disagree with you, dude. I have Jalen McMillan as in my dynasty league. And he kind of woke up at the end of the season when he had to take over for Chris Godwin. I wouldn't say McMillan has been that bad to say he was garbage, but I do think the other Washington wide receivers have honestly they've been pretty quiet here in the NFL, whether they haven't gotten their shot or whatever it is, but they haven't really made much noise.
Right.
But Michael Penix, um, does taking Drake London this early, um, do you worry about Michael Penix being able to be uh getting him his touches that many times in a game to have that same volume of chase that you were talking about?
I don't. I think the only scenario that you have to worry about volume is what happens if Penix gets injured,
Hmm.
which he's had a history of in college, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not worried about him getting the ball. And then as of right now, unless some news is breaking, I'm pretty sure that um, Kirk Cousins is still a valuable backup there, right? And so I think he's gonna get his volume almost no matter what. It's just gonna be, hey, did he actually fall back a couple spots because Penix got hurt, or did he increase a couple of spots because Penix stayed healthy? I think that's as simple as it gets. I'm not worried about Penix getting him the ball being a number one option over there.
Nice, dude.
And
Well,
then
yeah, I love the pick.
real quick,
Yes.
Jalen McMillan has not been terrible, but then let's give you a compliment as well too. You with your quarterback pick from earlier, elite level quarterback. Guess
Hmm.
who's throwing him the ball? Baker Mayfield, right? So
Right, right.
he doesn't also have a scrub throwing him the ball. I think Baker Mayfield can definitely help out. For those who are saying like, oh no no no, let's not forget that Baker Mayfield, I think, broke a rookie record initially when he was with the Cleveland Browns with almost nobody around him for passing touchdowns in the very first season. So
Right.
yeah, he's an elite level talent, even though it feels relatively recent. Now he's been elite for some time. So no, you're right. McMillan hasn't been terrible, but
Thank you. Thank you. I
but
appreciate
but
it.
I still think he's playing with an elevated quarterback.
No, for sure. I was just giving you a hard time.
I know.
But I will go ahead and jump into my first wide receiver pick here. Um, I'm gonna jump into it. I love Nico Collins. Nico Collins will be my first wide receiver, HIM-OTHY. And his ADP for me is surprisingly a little lower, so I think that's better value. And I think he's a lot better than some of the guys that are going ahead of him. And I'm going to explain to y'all a little bit why. So right now his ADP is around 14, meaning you can kind of get him in the middle of the second, depending on how big your league is. If it's 10 or 12, you could probably get him uh second round early if you do have that pick. Would probably be his best value. But some of the things that I love about Nico Collins is that physically, he's such a huge target, right? He's a massive, massive guy, coming in at 6'4". So he's going to be making those cornerbacks that are guarding him look really small, right? Keeping up with his speed. Last year, he finished 68 receptions, broke 1,000 yards at 1,006, and 7 touchdowns. And I think a big key thing to note is sure, that doesn't sound super yummy. He did that only on 12 games. He was injured for about 5 games during the season, which definitely took the wind out of him a little bit. But he's when he's healthy, similar to Christian McCaffrey pick, when he's healthy, he's a dog. Also, some of the things that the team did in the offseason, I think that are beneficial to Nico Collins is they added a veteran wide receiver in Christian Kirk, because Nico Collins is still only 26 years old. So he's still uh, in his, entering his prime, right? So having that older wide receiver there can definitely help with pointers. He had Stephon Diggs last year, but Stephon Diggs is now a Patriot. And then drafting guys like Jaden Higgins and Noel, those are guys that are also gonna, young wide receiver talent that if they can all pan out well, this wide receiver core for the Texans is gonna look nasty with CJ Stroud leading the charge. Some things I don't like about Nico Collins that I kind of already touched on is his injury history. He's missing games each season, similar to like other all-star wide receivers that are, on their way out of the league, unfortunately, but like Keenan Allen, super stud, right? But when he was hurt, I mean, you were just losing value with him. But when he was in, he was winning you weeks. So that is something that I do wish Nico Collins, obviously could do better on, but it's football. Injuries happen all the time. And things that I love about this team is obviously one, CJ Stroud, right? He's one of CJ Stroud's favorite targets. He looks for him all the time. And the two wide receiver additions, along with some of the wide receiver losses that they've had. There's no more Diggs. They just recently traded John Mechie to the Eagles, unfortunately, and then they also Tank Dell is still dealing with his injury. So there are a lot of guys that are out, but there are a lot of guys who are ready to step back in. So I think as long as the Texans can kind of have this inflow of wide receiver talent, I definitely don't see why Nico Collins still isn't the number one wide receiver for this team. Last year, he had 5 games as a top 13 wide receiver and 3 weeks that he finished in the top 10. And then he ended his season with a bang. It was a playoff performance, so this really didn't matter for fantasy, but he ended a game against the Texans or the Chargers, 7 receptions for 121 and 1. I mean, and then he also had another finish after that against the Chiefs. He went 5 for 81 and no touchdown. But I mean, he's a dog and he's going to get his targets. He's going to get his receptions. I think Nico Collins is absolutely someone who you could let fall to. If you're kind of sitting at that spot and you're waiting for the other league mates to make their pick, I would definitely me personally, I want Nico Collins over Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, and Malik Neighbors, who are all in front of him on Sleeper, for example. But would I go up and get him? Not necessarily. I would rather have him fall. But if I did have to kind of maybe punch up a pick or two, I would do it. But I think Nico Collins is definitely a guy that you're going to want on your team this year.
Yeah, no, great. I don't have anything against that pick. I just want to see, let me pull up my rankings really quick, Clay, because I want to give you a crazy, impossible question to answer really quick. If
I'm
you don't
ready.
mind, are you
I
ready
think I'm
for it?
ready.
All right.
I hope I'm ready.
Let's do this here. Similar to the Brock Bowers McBride question, I would say.
Oh
But
gosh.
I'm gonna be doing this on my feet here, so let's maybe it won't be as juicy. So you said Puka Nacua, you would draft him over. Okay. If you're staring at Nico Collins or CD Lamb, who are you picking?
Oh my God. I think I'm taking CD.
Okay.
That's kind of like a really quick, just
Okay.
right out response. I think CD is another HIM-OTHY. But the reason why Nico Collins is my HIM-OTHY is more because of his value that he's going at right now. CD,
Okay.
you do have to spend a top 5 pick for essentially.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see him falling out of the top 5.
But you did say you would take him over Amon-Ra? You would feel pretty comfortable in that?
I absolutely would take him over Amon-Ra.
Okay.
But I want to choose my words here carefully. If it's them two next to each other, I'm picking Nico Collins. If I'm but I'm also not, what am I trying to say here? I would rather him fall to me than me go up and have to spend a pick early to get him. You know what I'm saying?
I
I
guess
think he
so.
has
Yeah.
I do want him on my team, but there are certain circumstances that I would rather have him fall than me go up for, only because the wide receiver position in this league is just super dense, chock full of guys, even a lot of sleepers that are way, 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 way later on,
Mhm.
that we'll talk about in a sleeper episode.
Okay. I'm cool. No, yeah,
Um,
that CD one was easy. I got to give it to you. I was trying
yeah,
to, I thought it was gonna be harder, but I was like, no, yeah,
you're also
that's my
talking to a
thing.
Cowboys fan,
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
stupidly optimistic. I think CD Lamb is just he's so fun to watch. He's a dog.
Yeah, Cowboys do
He's
super well.
our Himothy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But go ahead and give me your last Himothy of the episode. Let's end on a bang.
We're gonna end on a bang here, and because we're ending on a bang, I got to say this. I love what we're doing here because, again, like we've talked about before, this gives us an outlook. We're fantasy maniacs. We love it. And even if nobody ever watches this, we're gonna keep doing our thing because we like it so much,
That's
right?
right.
Um, you know what I hate about doing this? We're giving
What?
our friends
Oh,
who
I know.
suck at fantasy football, they're absolutely garbage. We're giving them a free playbook here, you know?
Yep. I was thinking
Um,
about that earlier. They know what we're gonna be targeting now.
yeah,
It's but honestly, for guys like you and me, it kind of gives us a challenge.
yeah, that's fair. We
Now
have to beat ourselves,
because they were so
essentially.
bad. You're a back-to-back champion in our league. You kind of had to make it harder. These guys are obviously they need help, and we're here to help them.
We're here to
We're
help.
also here to help all of you guys. But
Right.
no, I was thinking the same thing. This is definitely gonna kick up our league a little bit too, since now they know who we're looking at.
So who I'm going out with the bang for Himothy's at the wide receiver position is Garrett Wilson. There's a lot of Garrett Wilson slander, and I'll go over that here in just a second. I think there's a lot of Garrett Wilson slander because there's a lot of Justin Fields slander. And I get it. It's kind of weird. Say what you will about Aaron Rodgers. I was initially going to say, who do we think is better at quarterback, Justin Fields or Aaron Rodgers? And some people might say that it's Justin Fields at this stage of Aaron Rodgers' career. I actually still think it might be close. I think Aaron Rodgers might surprise people in terms of production this year with the Steelers. But even not thinking about who's going to be better, who's going to be worse from that position, I think the thing that I look at is the 2023 season.
Hmm.
Yes, it's a little bit ago, but who was Justin Fields' number one option in the 2023 season? DJ Moore. And if you look at where DJ Moore finished, he finished as the wide receiver 6. DJ Moore, who I don't think is nearly as talented as Garrett Wilson, very talented wide receiver, but not nearly as talented in my opinion,
Yep.
had 1,300 receiving yards, right? Through 17 games, 96 receptions, and double-digit touchdowns. I just I don't know where the slander comes from. Like for especially for fantasy production, you're gonna have a situation to where Justin Fields is dependent on his target, right? On one person, because we've seen it before in the past.
Right.
And I think Garrett Wilson is gonna be Justin Fields, DJ Moore of the past, right?
Yep.
So I'm really confident at that. But even if he's not, let's look at some other things to be optimistic about. Number one, Garrett Wilson's cheap, ADP 35 right now. Eighth easiest
Crazy.
schedule for wide
Crazy.
receiver. Again, repeat that. Eighth easiest schedule for wide receiver. He's no longer going to be splitting um, targets with Aaron Rodgers' best friend, right?
Hmm.
And Devontae Adams. So you'd expect more targets to go to him. And having said all that, he didn't have a terrible season last year. 17 games, which he's played all 3 seasons so far, so relatively healthy. 101 receptions on 154 targets, 1,100 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. If Justin Fields targets him slightly more, and you just get this window of targets where it's just where Garrett Wilson can truly be the Jets wide receiver 1, you're talking about, in my opinion, that ADP starting to look really cheap by the end of the season, or
Right.
especially if you're in a fantasy or a dynasty draft. I mean, getting him late because people are afraid of Fields, uh, just say thank you and move on. That's how I would feel about that. Everybody who sends you a message afterwards saying, "Oh, you're so stupid. Why'd you take Garrett Wilson there? He's gonna be good." Just say thank you, and you'll see them at the end of the season. That's all you got to do.
Yeah. No, I think you're so right. I think it's hard.
And just quick
I
correction:
I
not double-digit touchdowns, just below double-digit touchdowns at 8 touchdowns in 2023. My apologies.
Gotcha. No, but even with that, I think people just love to hate, right? People just love to hate. They're born haters. I'm one of them sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. But Justin Fields hate, never really understood it. Have I been a part of it? I plead the fifth. But this season, I'm very, I mean, I agree with you. I think Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson, he is a wide receiver 1. A lot of people, is Garrett Wilson a wide receiver 1? Yes, yes, he is, and he's about to show y'all that he is. I just double checked something real quick though. In a dynasty, his ADP, Garrett Wilson's ADP is around 27, so it is slightly higher. He is valued a little bit more in dynasty, which he should, but that is again still a steal. Um, Garrett Wilson still so young, 25 years old. Has Justin Fields, who I mean, these Ohio State wide receivers, they're just built different. And we've
Right.
seen it with all of them. I mean, they're built different. They're the guy. Love the Garrett Wilson pick here. I actually traded for Garrett Wilson last year in our draft, or I mean in our league. And I traded him at a great time. We won't dive into it too much, but no, I'm a huge Garrett Wilson fan. I love the pick. Um, and I will dive into my last pick here for this episode. My last HIM-OTHY again comes at similar values of some of the other guys I've been talking about. So you would have to necessarily make a decision between this guy or some of the other guys that we've mentioned, just because their ADPs are similar. But if it gives you all some more insight on who to pick, we're at least like showing some cases for these guys of why you should pick them. But my last guy here is Mr. Lad McConkey, wide receiver for the Chargers. Lad McConkey right now is going at ADP number 25 in redrafts. He's typically going at the end of seconds, maybe or I'm sorry, like middle of the second, end of early third. That's kind of where he's going. And I think that's perfect value for him because what we saw last season, and this duo with Justin Herbert, I'm still a Justin Herbert believer, and so this is partly of the reason why I do believe in Lad McConkey. Um, so to look at Justin Herbert's other options here for this team, Quentin Johnston, he just got hurt. Unfortunately, it is football, but that injury that he sustained, it didn't look good. I don't know the timetable for his return as of right now, but that is a huge wide receiver that they're going to be missing, right? Then you also look at Keenan Allen, and again, Keenan Allen's been a fantasy name forever, fantasy household name, in fact, and he's just truthfully just aging out. So I think Lad McConkey, he was a dog literally for the Georgia Bulldogs, but also just a dog when it comes to football. He's got great hands. This guy catches the ball great at all distances, over the field, short, middle, long balls. He's going to catch them. And some things that I liked about that he did last year, he had 82 receptions, broke 1,000 yards, 1,149 to be exact, and 7 touchdowns. He played 16 games. He did miss one. And this team added some stuff in the offseason with their draft picks. They added rookie Trey Harris, who is another wide receiver, and Omarion Hampton for their probably starting running back, who is another big dynasty name that you'll hear a lot about. Some of the cons in Lad McConkey basically come more of the physical side. He's not the biggest. He's only about 6 feet tall, weighs about 185. So, you know, essentially any hit can kind of take Lad out. He's, that smaller guy, but thankfully he's very shifty and very fast. So hopefully that won't happen. But I mean, he's somewhat injury risk just because of his size. But pros, he did have 3 top finishes. Uh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 3 top finishes in the wide receiver 9 at the end of the season, and he ended on a wide receiver 1 finish in the playoffs on a massive blowout game that he just I think this is the reason why his fantasy stock is so high, because he ended on such a high note. He went 14 targets, 9 receptions, 197 yards and 1 touchdown against the Houston Texans. They did lose that game, but I mean, he's gonna be a wide receiver 1 for this team, and I think for your leagues. So I'm excited to take Lad McConkey, and I think if you can get him at great value, I think you absolutely should. But again, I'm not reaching for any of these guys. I think these guys are great where they're kind of falling. Christian, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, I like Lad. The only thing that scares me is Harbaugh going to commit to being, run first? Does that maybe top his cap off a little bit? Maybe.
Sure.
Yes, is Keenan Allen aged, but is he still Herbert's boy? Maybe, just like we saw with, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, when they kind of got remarried with the Jets for a little bit. So I do think that I do love the pick, especially in Dynasty. I think Lad is a true HIM-OTHY, especially in
Oh
Dynasty,
yeah.
because Allen's not going to be around forever, and eventually, they're going to have to funnel targets specifically through Lad. I think that the only thing I'd be concerned about in the redraft is if they can be a run first team, they will be. That would be my only concern, right?
Right.
But I still, again, not something that would push him back a round or two, maybe a pick or two for me. But overall, I love the pick just because, I mean, he was extreme value last year, and it's not like
Oh, he was.
it's
Yeah.
not like he's gonna get worse. So you would you
Right.
you would you would expect him to continue to work on his craft, just because you continuously see Lad get better and better so far throughout his college career and then his short NFL career so far.
For sure. I mean, yeah, and you look at, I mean, it kind of just goes to look at our picks that we did. I mean, Ladd and Brock Bowers were on the same Georgia Bulldogs team that blew out TCU in the national championship. I mean, that team was just different because of these guys. So I think there's a lot of carryover from how good they were in college to what they can do in the NFL. I think, guys from certain schools that are just kind of built a little bit more geared towards the NFL you're going to see that with guys like this. But I think that's going to wrap us up for our HIM-OTHY episode. And I want to talk a little bit about next week. We will be doing another live Dynasty mock draft with you guys. First one was redraft. This one is Dynasty. We are actually starting our first Dynasty league with our own league mates this year. So we'll hopefully we don't give too much of our information away to our other league mates who do listen to this. But yeah, so we have some more exciting stuff for y'all coming next week. But Christian, I will let you go ahead and sign us out.
Yeah, no, thanks again, everybody, for listening. Just really quick, if you guys want to give us a follow on the platforms that we're on, and just if you guys don't know that we're on some of these platforms, we do upload to Spotify, we do upload to YouTube. We do have an X account as well, which we're occasionally going to put out some late night random crazy thoughts, which I think are important to follow. And then TikTok as well. Just so if you want to follow us on those places, you're going to get a lot of good information, maybe bad information throughout the season, but either way, entertaining, right? I think
For sure.
that's the reason that you kind of stick around for us is you're either going to be laughing at us or laughing with us, which is kind of the fun part, right? But no, yeah, thanks again, Clay. This was awesome, man. Hopefully we come back here and do this again here pretty soon with another episode for the people.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. Well, thank y'all for listening. And like Christian said, be sure to drop a follow, leave us a like, and we'll come back to y'all next week. Thank you.